Hey guys, Ron here. Hope everyone is well. Uh, I say rhetorically, but I hope everyone is well. Anyway, tonight I'm going to tell you the story. This is a case that interests me, well, for a lot of reasons, but one reason is because it's about a couple that disappeared. It's not, usually I cover one individual. That's redundant. Usually I cover an individual. This is about a couple that disappeared. Richard Petrone and Danielle Imbo. Now it goes back a ways. It's from 2005, although I hear that in Philadelphia it's still a well-known case. That's where it happened. The couple lived across the river in New Jersey, but they were out in or near, I'm not sure, you Philadelphians can help me, they're in or near Center City at a bar that particular night, and were walking back to Richard's car and vanished and haven't been seen since. Anyway, I'll tell you about that. And since Danielle was going through a particularly, evidently very difficult divorce, I decided, what the hell, I need the therapy, and you guys can comment if you want. I'll tell you a little about my divorce, because divorces are some of the worst things in the world, except for maybe terminally ill diseases, depending on the divorce and the person, if you ask me. All right. It's not to be self-indulgent, and if you want to, fast forward past when I tell you about my particular situation, but I think people can relate, of all ages. And since my divorce didn't happen quite unexpectedly I was already into my 50s, I was like, oh man, 25, 35, you dust yourself off, no big deal, lots of fish in the sea, got my career, continue on. Anyway, when you're in your 50s, it's a different story entirely, let me tell you. But anyway, let's first talk about Danielle and Richard. So Danielle Imbo was going through a particularly painful divorce, as I said. In fact, her divorce was from Joe Imbo, where she got her last name at the time of her disappearance. I don't believe they were actually divorced. I believe they were separated. Richard Petrone was Richard Petrone Jr. There's two nice Italian families, that got together, basically because Richard worked in his parents' bakery in Ardmore, New Jersey, and Danielle was living in Laurel, New Jersey, and both had children. Obviously, I told you that Danielle was going through this divorce with her estranged husband, Joe, and they had a son that was, I don't think he was yet 2 years old at that time. And Richard had a 14-year-old daughter, Angela. And Angela, God bless her, she is now running the bakery, actually, where her grandparents owned. I don't know if they're still alive. And I think they are, actually. But I know she runs the day-to-day, I believe, and that her father, Richard, worked at. All right, there's a couple making out here, or pre-making out. Yeah, making out maybe. So we'll pause while they make out, and I'll go around them. Well, again, another situation. I see a really, really pretty girl with the guy that I say, what? What's she doing with him? Rich? Is he a drug dealer? Con man? I'm just kidding. Sort of. Anyway, so where was I? Oh, so Richard, I don't know who the mother of Angela, Richard's daughter is, because it said that Richard really didn't have an extensive relationship past, actually until he was in his mid-30s when he started dating Danielle. And the reason I say started dating as opposed to met is because the two families knew each other. Richard's sister was close friends with Danielle pretty much, going back decades, as far as I know, since they were kids. And like I say, now they were both in their mid-30s. Danielle worked for a loan officer, I believe. So they already knew each other. The families knew each other to some degree, and Rich, like I say, Richard, it was a difficult time, as I said, or maybe I didn't say yet, for Danielle. According to her brother, the emotional cost of the divorce she was going through caused her to lose weight. She was chain smoking. I'm sure it was very difficult on their son. She moved out to a townhouse, I believe, I believe they were always in Laurel, New Jersey, but she moved out to her own place. And she was splitting custody with her estranged husband, Joe Imbo. And like I say, it was taking a toll on her. And I guess it was just in the cards that there was a night where she and Richard's sister were out, I think at a bar, and Richard kind of tagged along. It was one of those, hey, you remember my friend Danielle? Of course, they all knew each other, and they, like I said, they weren't strangers, but they hadn't been romantically involved until this point. And then they started dating, and it was a kind of a I'm gonna wait till I pass some people here. It was kind of an off again, on again dating. In fact, that the night that they were together and that they subsequently disappeared, they had been kind of off for about 5 weeks. This was the first time they had seen each other in a little over a month, when they met up and went to this bar together. They went to a bar to hear a band that was playing there. I believe Daniel was dropped off there, and Richard drove his truck there. And it's always one of these situations where how much can you get out of people, particularly when people are partying, people are drinking, how much do they remember? Now, so I say, people say that Danielle was not much of a drinker. They don't know. I don't think they say exactly the same about Richard, but I don't know for sure. They say that they didn't drink that much, but do you really count your friends' drinks, when you're all out together? Especially it's loud, you're hearing. Richard loved to go out and hear rock bands. So if there was a band, a rock band playing, he'd be at the bars. And that's what he liked to do, one of the things, and that's what they were doing. So, I've been out hearing rock bands before, and with people, without people, and it's really difficult. Do you really watch people? But like I said, the people that they were with say that they weren't impaired to the point where they were worried about Richard driving. As a matter of fact, one of the guys that was with them was interrogated, I believe, more than once. They really focused in on him to see whether he was to be a potential suspect in this. So, boy, that makes me look really ghostly. That makes me look kind of ghostly too. So anyway, they left the bar, which, like I said, was either in or near. Oh! I know what I want to tell you. Let me get my personal stuff out of the way first. So you can, tune out for 3 minutes or 5 minutes here if you don't want to hear about it. But any of you, and I have demographic of all ages, but any of you that have been divorced, it's really tough. It's really tough. Now, statistics in the United States say between 70 and 80% of divorces are initiated by the woman, and I firmly believe that. So my divorce was, and women are strong, and man, they can move on. They mourn that loss before it's over, and they don't need another relationship unless they want one. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I give a lot of credit to women. Men tend to be a bit more dependent and attached and embittered, maybe. But anyway, my divorce was, I was with my ex for 14 years and never fought. It was one of those relationships where everybody thought, these people never fight. This is just too good to be true. And too good to be true usually is, because that last year, starting year 13, she came back from a business trip, new company, meeting all new people, all training together 3,000 miles away. She'd come home reluctantly on the weekends, but she didn't want to that particular trip. She wanted to stay there and not jump on a plane, which I understand. And, I was selfish. I said, come home. I don't want you to be gone for a month or 5 weeks or whatever at a time. It's too much. So when she came back, arguments started all out of the blue every month, like clockwork after that. And a year later, we actually separated and then subsequently divorced. And during the separation, she wanted to wait till she found a place. of her own, said, I want to wait a few months and let you kind of get yourself together and me get myself together and so on and so forth. And that was absolutely the worst 3 months of my entire life. I can't tell you how stressed out I was. I don't know. And you know, it's weird. I say that and I hear other people, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I slept every night in my own room. She slept in another room. I slept, I ate. All of a sudden, everything is gone. Your partner in bed next to you. You're not having sex for the first time in many years. I wasn't about to try and start dating, especially while she was still in the house. No way. So it was difficult. And she wanted to get together on weekends. And weekends that we would, you know, take our dog out. And it was extraordinarily stressful for me. I developed all kinds of weird phobias, and it was horrible emotional time. And when she finally moved out, it was a great relief. But our divorce took almost 2 years because of various things. And the first time we met at the courthouse, having not seen each other for about 2 or 3 months, she kind of leapt into my arms, cried, kissed me. I thought I'd be more emotional, but I wasn't, especially around the lawyers. Don't want to cry around your lawyer. No, but I wasn't in a crying mood, but she was really emotional. And by the end, when it was all over, those 2 years later, I went up to her across the hall. You know, your bed was basically sitting across the hallway from each other on benches. And I said, hey, well, it's all over now. You know, at least it's over. And we should have worked on it. I wish we would have raised the possibility of going to counseling. Like, I obviously was already involved in dating by the end of the divorce, but every woman I had met, was meeting, said, yeah, we went to counseling. Yeah, I broke it off with him, but we go into counseling. I want to try. Yeah, I broke it off with him, but we wanted to go to counseling. This was repeated over and over. Just about every woman I dated. Including the woman I was involved with at that time. And my ex just was so embittered by the conclusion. I guess it wasn't as favorable to her as she wanted. But hey, you got to think about things when you divorce somebody you've been financially and emotionally enmeshed with for 14 years. So she was pretty upset, embittered, and at the end said goodbye. And that was it. That was it. I tell you this because I know at least some of you can relate. And I also say this because I can see why, for various reasons, Danielle Imbo was chain smoking and losing weight, and sounds like she was taking it physically even worse than I did, and she was 20 years younger than I was at the time of my divorce. Actually, in talking about it, helps me see I took it pretty well. I mean, I am a survivor, and I'm strong, and starting your life over again in your 50s, it's absolutely fucking horrible thing to do. It really is, but I did it. You have to reinvent yourself. You become, Ron 2.0. Anyway, let's get back to the case. So, Danielle, that's a little, okay, now you can come back. So, Danielle and Richard go to this bar. They see a band. They leave at about 11:45. Richard was telling people in the bar, hey, it's only 20 degrees out, as you all know. I'm really happy because I got a parking spot close by where they didn't have to trudge through the, freezing temperatures too long. So they never made it back. So the next day, Joe Imbo shows up with their little son. And I believe that Danielle's parents were already there at her house, her townhouse, trying to look for answers. He was surprised to see them. So at first, of course, Joe was considered a suspect because he was the estranged husband. But there's a lot of theory. There's a lot of reasons to not believe. Personally, I don't believe Joe had anything to do with it. First of all, he's a rock solid alibi. He was not in Philadelphia or New Jersey. I don't know about New Jersey, but he wasn't in Philadelphia that night. So he did not ambush their car. I doubt he would even know where they were going to be. Also, the thought that it would be a murder for hire doesn't really make sense either, because, like I say, this was in fact, I believe that the bar they ended up at wasn't the first place they were supposed to be at. So somebody really would have had to be following Richard's big black truck very closely to find out, as he scurried through the city following them, to find out where they were going to be. So I don't believe it was that. The truck and the couple have never been found, and there, of course, have been theories all along. Um, my immediate thought when I heard it was, and I know how tough Philadelphia can be, I thought it was a carjacking. And that is one theory, that the car was jacked. But a lot of people don't think so because it's so improbable that somebody would carjack them, kill them, dispose of the bodies, and chop the truck without. But why not? I don't know why that's so difficult to believe. Um, they bury the bodies. They bring the truck to a chop shop, and it's over and done with. There are a lot of professional rings that do this, apparently. That's one theory. I happen to think that's likely. The other big theory was, or is, that Richard, whether impaired or not, inebriated or not, drove off a bridge. Now, I've done a lot of research on this, and a lot of people who live in Laurel, who happen to go into Philly, some of them every day, and vice versa, obviously, say that I believe it's the Ben Franklin Bridge that they take over, and there are other bridges and other waterways, and people think it's likely that they did crash off a highway or a road or bridge and ended up in the water. Now, that having said, to this day the waterways are still searched, and the FBI says they've searched every conceivable waterway, off every bridge, and that not only did no one in any area hear a vehicle going off a bridge scream, skid marks, vehicle into the water, but nothing has been found. And there's a group now that actually goes, and I believe they're volunteers, and they search for missing vehicles. And they did actually find a big black truck years later, but it wasn't the right truck. So did they go off into the water? Are they dead because of that, or was it like a carjacking? Again, I tend to think the carjacking theory is the most likely. This was Saturday night at 11:45. Apparently, it was very much busier then in that area than it is now, and the bar is now a Thai restaurant. But that there were many, while South Street itself was very busy. They say that the side streets there, and if it truly is Center City, Philly, if you've ever been there, it's literally where Ben Franklin was on the Liberty Bell, and where America was born for all intents and purposes. And you've got little tiny narrow streets, which we don't have here on the West Coast, but you certainly have on the East Coast, particularly in Philly and New York and places like that, particularly Philadelphia. So they say that the side streets were much quieter and probably darker. There's no footage, by the way, video footage of apparently of them even getting on a bridge. So if they were headed back to Danielle's place in Laurel, there's certainly no footage of it, whether they went off a bridge or a roadway or not. Now, they also looked into each other's past, and I think that Danielle's brother might have suggested something to the authorities to check out Richard and his family, which caused the families basically to start distrusting each other, and that's where the animosity started. They had been working in lockstep basically up to that time to find their kids, but I think once that went out there, then there was a lot of animosity between the two families, who had known each other for a long time, by the way. One of those, how dare you, what are you suggesting my son was into? There were rumors, there were theories. I mean, now law enforcement says they checked out Danielle's background thoroughly and Richard's background thoroughly. Like I said, Richard was working for his parents at the bakery. So the theories are going to start right away. Was he in the mob? Was he using drugs or dealing drugs? Was he into anything illegal? Law enforcement says no. Same with Danielle. Was she involved in any schemes or anything that she shouldn't have been involved in? I mean, you can understand. You've got to look into the drug element with anybody who disappears or might be or foul play was involved. And unfortunately, folks, a lot of people are involved with drugs and shady things. Social drinking is one thing, but there are people who are involved in some shady shit. And unfortunately, that's what happens sometimes. But like I said, it seems convinced that they were not into anything shady or illegal or anything that would put them in danger. I mean, there are all kinds of rumors that there were jailhouse confessions. Um, a killer who killed himself and left a note apparently mentioned them. Law enforcement says no, they weren't in the note. Another killer who's behind bars now, who may or may not have been involved. I mean, I think it was foul play. I don't think they went off into the water, and I think they would have been found by now. Other vehicles have been found. Obviously, they haven't. I think that they were abducted quickly. I don't know how these things work, but I think that these carjackers were waiting. They saw a couple. Maybe they thought they were vulnerable because they had been drinking. It was late at night. I think they grabbed them, took their money, and killed them. Maybe Richard fought back. Maybe they both fought back. Maybe killed them for the and took their money and chopped the chop shop for the parts for the truck. So we'll never know. Anyway, folks, I shouldn't say we'll never know. Some cases get solved, but this one's particularly baffling. All right, guys. So yeah, I think that's it. Like I said, they did research on both families and both the victims, and they didn't find anything. Apparently, there's nothing out there to suggest they were into things they should not have been. And again, even if it were a targeted killing, it would have probably been a lot easier to snatch Danielle from her home or her job, or Richard from the bakery, someplace they knew they were going to be, because like I said, they were kind of into a little bit of bar hopping this night. I don't think that Adelaine's, which was their final destination, that bar, was known to people, and I don't think that was their intended first place to stop. So, you know, kind of hard to follow somebody, and GPS wasn't what it is now in 2005. So the technology just suggests to me in the circumstances wasn't like, well, we're just going to follow them wherever they go, and then eventually they'll walk out of the bar and then we'll nab them there. I just don't think so. So anyway, glasses off. That's my theory. All right, guys. Well, Ron's signing out, and I will say thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I almost always appreciate your comments if they're thoughtful and make sense and are intriguing. And I certainly hope you'll give the channel likes, because you know, I'm starting to make pennies, literally pennies on this channel, and I'd like to at least make enough to you know, pay for my gas on some of these walks and talks. And I've got a whole bunch of homes I've discovered, celebrity homes, I'm going to be showing you in the coming weeks, God willing, hopefully. So anyway, that's all, and I'll see you guys at the next location. Thank you, and bye-bye.